Yay, Jack's lonely no more. So, how I made this? Right, attempting to cut this down to give you just the basic shapes, because to be totally honest, this playing around with the wire and stuff, I bet all of you could make this so much better than me. But basically, I'm using the galvanized wire from Tesco's that I reviewed in a previous video, and I'm just making a shape for his body. My original idea was I was going to make this shape and cover it in fabric covered in paper pole to make a more solid body, but then I decided to felt it. So the initial shape here, made with the first really long piece of wire, there's a little twist for the neck coming down. The V at the front's going to be where his cape opens, and then around to his tail, and then through his little neck V we're just popping in two more little bits of wire to twist onto the bottom as well. This just stabilizes the whole piece, which would have held the weight of the paver pole. And it also, the idea was that it was going to give some ridges in the piece as well, like in the one that I'm going from the diagram from a picture I just found on Google search. So this is the final shape roughly that you're aiming for. And then just covering the whole thing in wool, trying to keep it as tight and as neat as I can, which is a pain because there's some fiddly bits in here, but literally just carefully taking really small pieces of the core wool. This is the carded white corridale, and I'm just wrapping round through every single bit of wire, the small pieces, and then just kind of catching the end of one onto the start of the next one, so that it all covers the whole thing without having to use massive pieces of wool, so you don't get all tangled up. Now the point here, going all the way down the tail bit, as you'll find out later, was a total waste of time and far too fiddly. I could have just wrapped the entire tail in one go, but I didn't know at the time. And that's the point of this video. I want to show you my experimentation, the things I'm learning, rather than so much a step-by-step tutorial, because I think kind of everybody can do basic shapes and everything. If you can't, I have plenty of videos to show you basic shapes. So I just want to show you the shapes I'm creating for this Jack. So that's the skeleton, that's the frame all wrapped, and I think Jack approves. So now we're going to make the head for our Zero, and this is very similar in the way of how I make my open mouth muzzle for dogs, apart from just the shape. His shape's a little different, but firstly starting off making a ball, rolling some fleece into a ball, felting it not too firmly just now because we've got a fair bit of sculpting going on. And then to work on his muzzle, the difference here is it's much wider at the base, tapering to a point, so it's kind of like a triangular shape. So I'm folding it into that kind of shape, just thinking of the shape of what I want his muzzle to be as I go along. So pointed at the end, and it's going to be rounded, curved up the way, but also exactly like in making my open muzzle shape, I'm thinking of felting inside the mouth to make the roof of the mouth curved as well. So finally, when we get this shape, it's going to have the bridge, the inside of the mouth is going to be slightly shaped as well, and this will help when we try and colour it in. As you can see, starting to take shape. So once it's a rough shape, it's very soft just now, that's the point to tack it onto the body and start really working on the shape a whole lot more, firming it up, keeping that rounded mouth, inside of the mouth feeling, keeping it pointed at the end and a nice curve up. And that's what it should look like. It looks like a strange kind of clog just now. I don't know if that's just me imagining things, but we've got the ball and then the curve for the nose. It doesn't actually curve up quite as far as you think because he's got his pumpkin nose on the end, and that's what I'm talking about, having the curve underneath as well, the inside of his mouth. And a couple of ovals on for eyes, and then it's ready for his lower jaw, which is very similar to the upper jaw, just a bit smaller and a bit thinner. So just felt in a triangle shape between my fingers, and then this is it finished. Slightly tried to round out that as well on the inside like I did for the top of the mouth. Now here we have the experimentation phase. I thought if I was going to add black fibres there, the risk was too great that I would put the fibres all the way through and poke them too far so that the black fibres come out the back. So I attempted using water and my artist chalks to try and get a nice dense black colour. But as you can see, it is looking rather wishy-washy. Not impressed with this at all. So I tried, that was with a small brush that I had, so I tried using the cotton balls that comes with the kit, dunking them in water in the hope that it will pick up extra pigment. Really good soaking. Popping it onto the chalk to see if I can pick up as much as absolutely humanly possible, and crossing my fingers that this works somehow. So, because if you just use the chalks dry, they give a lovely gentle shading and it doesn't wear off or anything. It's properly dyed onto the fibres. I always thought it would rub off, but it doesn't. So I thought adding a bit of water would give a much denser colour, but no, I am not impressed with this. That's a no here. So let's try something else. Sharpie, of course a Sharpie will work. Sharpies are awesome, they draw on every material. So just trying the same thing. Now the only concern I had with this is occasionally when I've used Sharpies on my fleece, the colour bleeds a little bit, so I was super worried here trying this that it was going to bleed right through the lower jaw, which is why I tried it on the lower jaw, because it would be less work to replace. But trying to colour in, and it's not bleeding through, but that's about the only good bit of it. I'm pretty much not impressed. That it's still a rather wishy colour. I want a nice solid black. This is the inside of his mouth. And the other thing is with both of these is they drag fibres with them and make it kind of loose and fuzzy on the inside, which I'm really not a fan of. So again, unfortunately the Sharpie we tested didn't work for this. And just having a closer look, you can really see how wishy-washy and just no that is. So back to plan A. And that's the point of these videos I'm planning to make now. Rather than show you exactly how to make something, I want to show you my experimentations, my thought process. Because each of these items is a one-off, it's not so much a tutorial, it's more this is what I did. So being super careful, felting along more parallel to the shape of the mouth rather than poking through to try and reduce the chance of black fibres being dragged through, because they will really show up on the white. So felting the top and bottom jaw, and that's what it looks like when we're finished. So nice dense black colour, much better than the Sharpie. And wanting to stick these together, he has a slight, now I never remember, is it overbite or underbite when his lower jaw is set further back? So putting that a wee touch further back, felting both pieces together. You can hold this between your hands in the position that you want and just felt all round. If you need to, add small pieces of fleece that'll help it blend together much better. But it felts together really easily just at the back of the jaw. And now this is the point. Right, I had been planning to use pre-felt for this. All along I was thinking to myself, I'll use pre-felt to cover the frame that I've just made. It will drape beautifully, it'll be lovely. Yeah, this is the point where I realise that I don't have any pre-felt. So yeah, failure to plan here. So I just decided, because the gaps between each piece of wire are actually not that big, so I decided to have a try at just felting the covering over myself. So small amounts of fleece, and I put them on top and underneath and just carefully felted all over, squeezing between my fingers, trying to make a sheet of fleece, and this gave me quite a lot of control if I wanted some bits to go longer and further out than where the wire was, or closer together. I was able to make the end of it slightly taper and get thinner as I felt that it would be. And also at the very front of him there's a bit of an opening that almost looks like a cut edge, so making sure to felt that up and down nice and smoothly. But going from the top and the underneath gave it quite a firm little structure. Obviously, if you don't want to make this wire frame, you can make the whole thing out of fleece, just have him with a flat bottom and a solid cone shape body. But there's the jaw firmly attached, and there's his body all covered up as well. Like I say, it'd be so much easier with pre-felt, but actually the final result's not too bad with just the core wool. And Jack approves. He's quite easily pleased, thankfully. Okay, head onto the body. Well, before I put the head onto the body, actually, the lower jaw was annoying me. In the picture, in the cartoon, it's a very, very thin lower jaw, and I tried to keep this as thin as I could without getting dangerous, but it was just looking too chunky for me at right under the head phase. So we went with a pair of scissors and hacked at it until I was more happy with it. That's the awesome thing. And if I cut too fine, you can see some of the black coming through, but that's not really going to matter because I can cover it up with a tiny bit of fleece, but without adding too much bulk. So you can add fibres, but you can also trim fibres away until it's something you're happy with. So that's much better. And then just clearing up, using some of the fluff I cut off of him just to add back into making a kind of fuzzy neck so I can attach him to the body. Now this bit's a little bit fiddly. You've got to hold onto the head in the position you want and felt into the body and felt into the head until the pair of them join nice and firmly. It takes a bit of work, but you can add fibres if there's any join lines and try and give it a nice smooth line, and spend a good bit of time on this to make sure that it's a join that you can barely see and it's nice and firm. And once these all join together and smooth, this is what he should look like. And again, Jack's loving seeing his wee friend come into life. So for his ears, I decided, as I didn't have any pre-felt, just using a pipe cleaner and roughly figuring out how long I want it to be was 2 ears, so I folded in half so I can get the length of both of them at the same time. Give it a wee wiggle, decide on the size that I'm going to want. Chop the wire, so we've got 2 wires, fold the ends over as normal. And then I'm going to wrap each of these in some more of the core wool and try and felt them as flat as I can between my fingers. So I'm not wanting a tube, I'm wanting like a flat ribbon as best I can, and aiming for a pointed tapered end as well. And once we've got the 2 ears, we're obviously going to felt them onto Jack's head. But first we want to make his nose, which his nose is a little pumpkin, which is so awesome. Now I've done tutorials for pumpkins in the past, but nothing this tiny. What you're wanting to do first of all is to make a ball, not too firmly because we're still wanting to change the shape to make it more pumpkin-y. So once you've got it round into a ball, then all you do is felt, decide where the top and bottom's going to be, and felt straight lines from the top and bottom to almost make kind of wedges all the way round, and this creates the shape of the pumpkin. And then attach the nose onto the end of the dog's muzzle. Just really careful not going too far through the through the nose, else you'll get some of the orange fibres coming out onto the muzzle. But no matter how careful you are, you'll probably do a bit of that. I certainly did, which you'll see later, but we can fix it, it's no problem. And nose is added, ears are in place. I'm just adding little fibres to smooth out the joins in the ears. And we're nearly there. Just his collar to go. So this is just a piece of red fibre that I'm just pulling out a bit long enough to go around his neck, and I'm just going to felt straight lines top and bottom, so it's nice and flat. It doesn't have to be too crazily firmly felted, but just felting between my fingers, a flat edge at the top and the bottom, and then popping it on his neck. And if you've brought through some orange fibres from his nose onto his muzzle, then just add a little bit of white on top. This also helps secure it a little bit. Just make sure they're wispy at the end so you don't have any blunt lines showing, but yeah, a little bit of white really helps at this point. Now, I did consider the idea, the pumpkin on his nose is actually a jack-o'-lantern with the eyes and the mouth, and I did consider it was far too small to felt this. I wouldn't have been able to get anything that didn't look a mess. I was considering painting it on with acrylic paint, but again, I was concerned that this would just look a mess, and it looks cute as it is, so I decided just to leave him with a plain pumpkin nose rather than the jack-o'-lantern. And then just as your final touch, his ears are wavy. They're just scraps of fibre blowing in the wind. Again, I had thought of using pre-felt and paver poling it onto just leaving some lumps of something for them to sit under. I hadn't got that planned out too well, but just to harden a piece of pre-felt in a kind of floaty back shape. But I decided to go on and felt these, especially because I didn't have any pre-felt, but just felting them into a kind of flowy, wavy pattern, moving back the way. And that's it, you're done. I hope you enjoyed making your zero, or at least seeing me make the zero. I know Jack's delighted not to be on his own anymore. Don't forget, come back every week for more felting tutorials. Like, share, comment, all the usual stuff, and thank you so much for joining me.